Teenage Engineering Pocket Operator PO-33 KO. This is a little sampler. Has a built-in microphone and has a line input on the side and a headphone or line output on the other side. I'm always surprised these are kind of the wrong way around. You'd expect that next to the mic would be the line in, but it's not, it's that one, and that's your headphone output. I picked one of these up a few months ago and I've been using it in a video game soundtrack project that I've been working on. I picked this one up untested, quite cheap. It has a couple of minor faults. One is that the microphone doesn't actually work on this, but the line input does. And occasionally I get little bursts of noise, I think, from the internal DC-DC conversion. But generally it's been great. They have kind of a crunchy sort of sound to them. They have, I believe, a 16-bit 48K converter. They're great fun just because they're so tiny, and I just love small instruments, really. Anything kind of like that you can handhold and play with anywhere you want. They run off a couple of AAA batteries, and the battery life is fairly decent on them. And I think they have a quality of kind of classic samplers, kind of fairly limited older samplers like the kind of 8 and 12-bit samplers you used to get in the 80s, that sort of thing. One of the limitations is that they're only mono, and you can't, unfortunately, mute parts on when they're playing. They have a little built-in speaker, and you can do different kind of effects and different things by holding down different buttons in combination. And there's a couple of rotary pots you can use for volume or pitch or all sorts of things, really. But this is not a demo of this product by any means. One of the limitations of these is that they're only mono. Although they have a 2-channel output, they're only mono in their sampling and playback. I've found that mostly not to be a problem, but quite often you may get to a point when you're making something with one of these that you might want to export it to, say, a DAW and build on that, and you have to kind of do it piece by piece, because the individual tracks won't come across, of course, with any separation, the individual parts on there. I guess by their price point that Teenage Engineering's answer to that really is just buy another, which would be really, really easy. Well, I did. This one also came with a fault. You've probably already spotted it. This actually fully works. It's just got the factory demos in. But the two rotary pots are pretty bent. They've definitely taken a knock. I actually managed to bend this one back a little bit. Now, it does actually work. That works fine. This one does work, but it will only go so far before it kind of binds up at the end. So this one was picked up pretty cheaply, because I've just got to fix the dials on it, but everything else does work. Then I got another one. This one came with this one, and it was even cheaper, because I don't know if you can see on there, very faintly on the screen I've written dead. It's completely dead. If I put batteries in it, and I should mention there is a factory reset mode. If you hold, I think it's pattern and right, and put batteries in at the same time, so obviously you need about 7 hands to do this, but if you can do that and then put the batteries in, they have a factory reset. I've already tried it on this one. That actually saved my first one because it was just stuck in silence, but when I did the factory reset it came to life. This one does nothing. These have test points on the back, and I've already looked at a website called Hacking the PO, which I will link in the description below, that describes what these test points do. And luckily, having 3 of them, at least 2 of them are working, I want to have a look at these test points and see what we're getting, because I have a couple of suspicions of what may be doing this. These have a voltage regulator, a 2.5 volt LDO, and all the electronics are actually under the screen. So in order to be able to get to these, I've got to take the screen off. So my plan is I'm going to take this one apart and see if I can get any life out of it. If it's beyond repair, definitely my capabilities, what I might do is take this pot off, because this one's alright. This one for some reason is really loose, so that's probably a bit worn out. This one feels fine. This may become a donor for this one. I should mention you can actually buy these parts. iFixit.com I think is one of the official sort of parts suppliers for teenage engineering. Be aware that they make an enormous markup on all their parts, and there is a list I found on Reddit that just describes the actual part numbers that these are. They're Alps pots. The buttons I think are another manufacturer I've forgotten, but again I'll link that below. But it's possible to put standard kind of Alps RK09 pots in these spaces, and they'll work fine. You don't have to pay $20 a piece or whatever iFixit want for them. They're just standard small pots really. So I think we'll fire up the desoldering station, get the multimeter out, and have a look at this one, see if we've got any life in it, any voltages, and see where we go from there. So for a reference point, I'm going to start with my original model, which is turned on at the moment, and this is pretty fiddly to do. You have to sit down here because you've got to kind of hold the bottom of it down to keep it steady, and I'm already triggering one of the buttons there. Right, let me swap hands, and if I can do this without covering up the meter. The first point in the top there is a ground point, so that's there, and the second one along with a plus under it is your actual battery voltage. So 2.8, so we've got a pretty fresh pair of batteries in there. The second one along to that, sorry, the third one along I should say, is the 2.5 volt regulator, and 2.499, so that's pretty close. Let's just compare that on the other one that works, which I think is still on. Actually, that has gone to sleep, which may be beneficial. Let's see if we can do this without waking it up, because I'm interested to see if the regulator continues to work when it's asleep. This will be a bit of a handful. The regulator has an enable pin on there. I'm interested to see if the enable is on. It is, I can just see that it is on, even though the unit's asleep. 2.5, so on our battery voltage there, 3 volts, so these are slightly fresher pair of batteries. I have actually just noticed something on this one. That top battery clip has bent. They're just about contacting, but that top clip has had a knock. So that's just a heavy sort of stiff piece of wire that's soldered in. So I might very carefully try and bend that back. But it is, to be fair, it's holding the batteries. They're making a contact. They're okay. So I don't want to wrench that off. But we know on that one that the regulator is running. On this one, let's pop the batteries out of there because they're a brand new pair of batteries. Let's pop those in there. They're not the easiest thing to get the batteries out of, these actually. They can be a little bit fiddly, but as you see, nothing. Let's see if we can meter this one out. So let's check the battery voltage. Now that's interesting. These are the same pair of batteries that measured 3 volts in the other one. Are we getting 2 volts? Are we getting anything on the regulator? No. So that's strange. So something's pulling that down, and I don't feel the battery's getting warm. I'm not sure, will it let me? I know this is backwards, but interesting. Both batteries are measuring the full voltage fine. As I say, I know the probes are backwards, but we get 1.5 volts, but in the regulator we're only getting 2 volts. and nothing. On the regulator input we're only getting 2 volts, and on the regulator output nothing. So either the enable signal is not present, or the regulator or something in its path is faulty. These black boards can be quite difficult to see the traces on. There's a couple there, but as I say, the majority of the electronics are actually under the screen. So I think what we'll have to do next is take off the screen. So I think I'll have to fire up the desoldering tools and see where we get with that. So I've done all I can with the desoldering pump, but I think there's a few ground planes and bits on this where the solder's just really difficult to get out. So I'm going to use some hot air on the back to try and see if we can get this loose. Do you spot the problem? The hot air is unfortunately completely written off the screen. Okay. Well, it was an experiment. That is really not moving. I think there's definitely a bit of glue used on the back of those screens. There's some sort of foam underneath, but man, how on earth you would get that screen out without actually destroying it like that? And I'm not levering on it heavy by any means, I'm just very gently pressing on it, but yeah, I don't think that's going to be a goer, is it? I think we abandon that. Even stranger, it's gone back, though I have caught the back of the reflector a touch there while I was trying to lever on it very gently with a screwdriver. Man, these look like a challenge to get off. I'm very, very cautious as well of the speaker, which is there. Not trying to blow the hot air into there, but man, maybe I could go from the top. Man, it would be lovely if possible to try and get that off. Let's try from the top. See the screen turning black again. So to sum up, that was an unmitigated disaster. They were an utter pig to get out. The display is completely written off, and one important thing to say overall, you don't win them all. And if this was my only one, would I have done that to it? No, I wouldn't. Knowing this was dead and knowing that it was kind of a sacrificial unit to begin with, I'm not too upset that I've done this. In the end, I ended up just cutting the legs of the display just to get this off. I think, to be honest, that's what you would have to do in any case to get under this display, because it's stuck on with a kind of foam ring that's actually glued in place, and you just can't apply the amount of heat that you'd require to be able to desolder these without making any kind of mark on the display. And if you come from the top with a heat gun, look what it does. It completely delaminates burns the display. I don't know if these displays are available on their own. Teenage Engineering don't supply parts directly, as far as I'm aware, which I think is why iFixit is their chosen supplier of spare parts at great cost. But it's interesting to look inside this. Now I finally cut the the display away. I think it's one of, there's two very similar looking chips, and one of these is the little 5-pin chips, is the regulator, which may be faulty. I think also as well, it's one thing to judge something by a picture, but actually getting into this, just how small some of this is incredible. And if it's one of the extremely tiny resistors or something like that that's faulty, I don't even know how you would begin to touch it. I'm not Lewis Rossman. There's even some really tiny ones that were under the two pots. This was incredibly difficult to get out because the problem you have is that the two centre legs actually go through one hole. So what happens is with the mounting legs on the pots, the two in the middle ended up kind of soldered together. Sorry, this is not focusing. So when I managed to sort of wrench these out, they came out kind of in one lump, like they're still stuck together, because you've got twice as much metal then kind of wicking all the heat away. There is a little bit of thermal relief on the pad in the middle, I can see, but only a little bit. You can see it's still sort of filled with solder. So these are probably all right. I really had to bend them back into shape, and I will keep them as spares. But I would say that it's possible to get these off, but it could go disastrously wrong. It was very difficult to get them off here. I would say you're probably better off just buying some new kind of Alps RK09. I think these are 100K. It says B103, so that's a linear taper 100K pot. There's no centre detent or anything like that. Any standard RK09 pot might look a little bit different, but as long as you can get the right height for the knob, you would be able to fit any standard RK09, I think, in these places. So if on the two that work they ever need replacing, well, I can test these and try these, or I can get some new ones. I haven't lost anything from this. This didn't work, it still doesn't work. What I've ended up doing on the other one is actually just bending them back very carefully, and I've now got full travel on this one, and both of them work and feel like they're fine. So I'm going to continue to use that as is. It's funny that it's still got the film on the display there, but I think something had been dropped on it. I managed to straighten this out as well. Again, just very carefully pulled it back, so I wonder if it had suffered some kind of impact from the front, which had also bent the back, because they were in a real mess. But everything else works fine on it. So, and with it still having the foil on the front, I wonder if it was shipping damage or something like that. But I bought them on eBay, described as broken at a buy it now price. So this one I'll keep for spare parts, because all the buttons, which are surface mount, so probably easier to get off, all the buttons are fair picking there for spares. And of course I've got the two pots that I took off. So at least I've got two that work, and I've got a spare one. The screen, as I say, was a disaster, so I don't recommend you try and remove it with hot air. Incredibly difficult to desolder. If someone's successfully done it somewhere, then please share with us how on earth you did it. But I have a feeling these go on one way, and that's probably about it. So, as I say, don't win them all. Hopefully you've got something from this. Thanks for watching.